Hey kids. So today we are starting chapter 5, and chapter 5 is all about percentages. Today is our vocabulary preview, and I want to just go over some words that you'll need to know for this chapter. Now, the first one is ratio. Definition of a ratio is a comparison of two numbers, A and B, that can be written as a fraction A over B. The ratio of the blue squares to red squares is 5 to 1. You can write it as 5 over 1 as a fraction, or 5 with a colon and a 1. So you can write it with the word 2 as a fraction or with a colon. The other thing I want to talk about here is that you have to be very careful when reading a problem, because it's not always going to be just blue squares to red squares. Sometimes they will ask you for the total number of blue squares to total squares, which would be 5 to 6, or how many red squares to total squares, which would be 1 to 6. So whenever you're reading a problem, you want to make sure that the way that they ask for a ratio in the problem, you put it in the same order. The first thing they're asking for is your numerator, and the second thing is your denominator, or the first thing is the A, the second is the B. So you make sure that you keep everything in order when you read the problem. Okay, the next word that you'll need to know is simplest form, and we've been working with this one all year. Another word for simplest form would be reduce, or lowest terms. The definition here of simplest form is a fraction in simplest form when the numerator and the denominator have only 1 as a common factor, which means that you cannot divide it by any other number and get a whole number answer. So here an example would be 6/8. 6 and 8 are both even numbers, and so both even numbers can be divided by the number 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, 8 divided by 2 is 4. So you can simplify 6/8 to an equivalent fraction of 3/4. And that's putting it in lowest terms. Another word you need to know, and this one you've been working with all year as well, is quotient. A quotient is an answer from a division problem. So whenever you divide, your answer is called the quotient. A rate. A rate. This is what we're going to work on a lot this chapter. So a ratio that compares two quantities having different units of measure. So for example, an airplane climbs 18,000 feet in 12 minutes. The rate of the climb is 18,000 feet to 12 minutes. So you could write that as 18,000 feet over 12 minutes, or 18,000 feet to 12 minutes. So a rate is just comparing two things that's happening. It could be a measurement of how long. We hear miles per hour. Maybe if you're making a recipe, it could be cups to total ingredients. There's lots of ways we use rates, and we will learn more about those this chapter. All right, a factor. Factor. This one you should know from chapter 2. A number multiplied by another number to find a product. So factors can be used, the word factors can be used in a lot of different ways. A factor could be a number in a multiplication problem. A factor could be a number that divides another number. So for example, if you have the one that we had here, let me bring this one back out, the 8 and the 6. 2 is a factor of 8 and 6, because 2, when you count by 2s, you will hit 6 and 8. So this is a factor. Factors are numbers multiplied together to get a number. Or that number can also be divided by any of those factors, and that is because of fact families that you learn about in 4th and 5th grade. All right, the next word is percent. A percent is a comparison of a number to 100. A percent means per 100. So here we have 100 squares, and we have 45 of them filled out. So we have 45% of the whole filled in there, or shaded in. So a percent is how many out of 100. A decimal is a number with one or more digits to the right of the decimal point. So here we have our decimal, and there's a tenths place after it. Here we have 7 and 53 thousandths, because remember we have tenths and right after the decimal, and then over 1 is going to be our hundredths, and then our thousandths. There's one more rule that we talk about sometimes in 6th grade, is that if you have a number, just a whole number 3, and you don't have a decimal, there's no decimal shown, the decimal is always to the right of the number. So if you have a whole number, we say, if not in sight, the decimal's on the right. And then equivalent ratios are ratios that are equal. So here, a lot of times, in this chapter, we're going to be using tables to compare ratios, and they'll give us an original ratio, and then each spot on the table, that ratio will be multiplied by a certain number, so you can look at the equivalent ratios. So this one, it says ratios are the name of a same comparison. So this is how many box cards are in a box. There's 6 cards in one box. So if we double that, it would be 12 cards in 2 boxes. If we triple it, 18 cards in 3 boxes, multiply it by 4, 24 cards in 4 boxes, or multiply it by 5, and we have 30 cards in 5 boxes. And so we're going to be doing that this chapter as well. Okay, that is our vocabulary preview for today.